Picture it. Munich, 1911. The old rules of painting are starting to sweat. Realism has had a very good run. Perspective is sitting there with its resume. The art academies are still pretending they get to decide what matters. But modern artists are asking, what if painting does not have to behave anymore? What if color could make sound? What if a horse could carry spiritual truth? What if modernism was vibrating so hard it practically needed a tuning fork? Welcome to Art Happens, the divine mess of art history, presented by J Squared Atelier. I'm James William Moore, and this is Movement in About 10 Minutes. Today, the Blue Reiter, or in German, der Blaue Reiter. A movement of color, spirituality, animals, abstraction, music, and modern artists trying to paint the invisible. And yes, the name sounds like either a superhero, a mysterious nightclub, or a horse-based spiritual awakening. Honestly, it was kind of all three. The Blue Reiter formed in Munich around 1911, led most famously by Wassily Kandinsky and Franz Marc. It was less a movement with rules and more a gathering of artists who shared one belief. Art needed to go deeper than appearances. They wanted painting to express emotion, spirit, energy, and inner life. They believed color could carry meaning. They believed abstraction could reveal truth. They believed art could connect the visible world to something unseen. They were not asking, how do we make this horse look realistic? They were asking, what does the soul of a horse feel like in blue? The Blue Reiter belonged to the wider world of Expressionism, but with its own mystical flavor. Where some Expressionism shouts, the Blue Reiter hums, and occasionally stampedes. To understand the Blue Reiter, we start with Wassily Kandinsky. Kandinsky's big idea was simple and radical. Painting could work like music. Music does not need to show you a tree, a bowl of fruit, or a dramatic little chair in order to move you. Music can be abstract and still make you feel grief, joy, tension, calm, ecstasy, or chaos. A symphony does not have to look like anything. It just has to act on you. Kandinsky wanted painting to do that. He believed color, line, and form could affect the viewer directly, almost like sound. A color could become a note. A line could become a rhythm. A shape could become spiritual pressure. For Kandinsky, abstraction was not just a style. It was a way to reach past the surface of things. He did not want to paint only what the eye sees. He wanted to paint what the soul experiences. Once painting no longer had to describe objects, everything changes. Color is free, shape is free. The canvas is no longer a window. It becomes an instrument. And Kandinsky is basically asking, why are we making paintings behave like polite little mirrors when they should be orchestras? Then we have Franz Marc. And with Marc, we get one of the most memorable parts of the Blue Reiter. Animals, especially horses. Not casual horses. Not a lovely horse in the field horses. Marc's animals are spiritual beings. For him, animals represented a kind of purity human beings had lost. He saw them as more connected to nature, more innocent, more instinctive, and more whole, which is beautiful, and also a tiny bit insulting to humanity. But looking at the 20th century, Franz may have had a point. In Marc's paintings, animals become symbols of emotional and spiritual states. His horses, deer, foxes, and other creatures are often painted in bold, unnatural colors. Blue horses, yellow cows, red deer. Marc is not using color to describe what something looks like. He is using color to suggest what something means. A horse does not have to be brown because a horse is brown. A horse can be blue because blue expresses depth, spirit, calm, longing, and transcendence. Color breaks free from reality. It no longer reports the facts. It tells the emotional truth. The Blue Reiter is modern art searching for the sacred in the middle of modern chaos. And that brings us to the name itself, the Blue Reiter. Kandinsky liked riders. Marc liked horses. They both liked blue. That sounds almost too simple, like the world's most charming art history shrug. But the name holds the spirit of the movement. The rider suggests motion. The horse suggests instinct, nature, and power. Blue suggests spirituality, depth, and the infinite. So, the Blue Reiter becomes an image of movement towards something beyond the visible world. It is art on horseback, galloping away from realism and toward inner necessity. And that phrase, inner necessity, was central to Kandinsky. He believed art should come from an inner spiritual need, not from fashion, not from academic approval, not from copying what is already visible, but from something urgent inside the artist. That is why the Blue Reiter matters so much to abstraction. It helped argue that art did not need recognizable subject matter in order to have meaning. A painting could be meaningful because of its color, movement, rhythm, energy, and emotional force. Not, here's what the world looks like, but here's what the world feels like underneath. In 1912, Kandinsky and Marc published the Blue Reiter Almanac. Think of it as their visual and spiritual mixtape. It brought together modern art, music, folk art, children's art, medieval works, and art from outside the European academic tradition. The point was clear. Art is bigger than the academy. Art is bigger than realism. Art is bigger than one official definition of beauty. Now, like many modern European artists of the period, they were fascinated by non-Western and folk traditions, but often viewed them through the limited and problematic lens of their own culture. This is part of the history too, but the larger rebellion was important. They wanted something more direct, more symbolic, more emotional, more alive. They wanted art to become less obedient, and honestly, I support that kind of behavior. But the Blue Reiter did not last long. Its main period ran from about 1911 to the outbreak of World War I in 1914. That ending casts a shadow over the whole movement. Here you have artists searching for spiritual renewal, emotional truth, and a more connected way of seeing. And then modern Europe answers with war. Franz Marc was killed in World War I in 1916. Auguste Mack, another artist associated with the group, was killed in 1914. The movement's dream of transformation collided with the brutality of the modern world. And suddenly, those blue horses feel different. They still glow. They still move. They still carry that spiritual charge, but they also tremble. The Blue Reiter was not just a colorful movement about abstraction. It was a movement standing on the edge of catastrophe. So why does the Blue Reiter still matter? Because it helped change what painting could do. It moved away from copying appearances and toward expressing inner experience. It helped make abstraction one of the central languages of modern art. It gave color, emotional, and spiritual force. It treated music, painting, symbol, and feeling as connected. And through Franz Marc, it gave animals a strange, beautiful, symbolic power. The Blue Reiter reminds us that modernism was not only about machines, cities, speed, and fragmentation. It was also about searching. Searching for meaning, searching for spirit, searching for a visual language that could express what realism could not. The Blue Reiter asks, can art tune us back in? Can color wake us up? Can a blue horse tell the truth? Apparently, yes. And it does not even have to apologize for being blue. The Blue Reiter did not simply paint the modern world. It listened for its frequency. It heard modernism humming, cracking, pulsing, vibrating with possibility and dread. Instead of trying to calm it down, Kandinsky, Marc, and their circle turned up the volume. They gave color a voice. They gave animals spiritual force. They gave abstraction permission to sing. They reminded us that sometimes art does not need to show us what the world looks like. Sometimes art needs to show us what the world feels like when it's changing too fast to name. That is the Blue Reiter. Modernism on horseback, spirituality in color, abstraction with a pulse. And yes, a movement vibrating so hard it practically needed a tuning fork. Thank you for joining me for Art Happens, the Divine Mess of Art History, presented by J Squared Atelier. I'm James William Moore, and this has been Movement in about 10 minutes. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a review. If you're feeling generous, dramatic, or spiritually moved by a blue horse, and join me next time. Because art is never just art. It is history, rebellion, longing, obsession, accident, and occasionally a horse painted blue because realism simply did not handle the assignment. Perfection is overrated, art is messy, and that is where the good stuff happens.